Hello and welcome, everyone. This is our latest episode of the Tyk Office Hours. Today, we're going to be exploring why you need a hybrid approach to API management. Before I start sharing my screen, as I would usually do, I am Budha, product evangelist here at Tyk, and I'll be the one who's going to be walking you through today's conversation and moderating and facilitating our great panel that we have today with us. Starting off with quick introductions around the room, virtual room. We have Sonja over here, who's our group product manager. Hello, Sonja. Really good to have you here.
Happy to be here.
She's the one who is responsible for all things Tyk Cloud and Tyk Hybrid, all of the conversations that we're going to be having today. From the product side of things, she's the one who's responsible for bringing all of that to life, bringing all those great capabilities to life. Of course, with the engineering team behind the scenes, but she's the one who's leading it. I'm just going to caveat that as well. It's not a one person, but great to have you with us. And also with us is Jia from the Americas commercial team. He is one of our leading tech solutions architect. Hello, Jia, good to have you with us.
Hey, great to be on. Pleasure to be here.
All righty, so now that we've done our introductions, I'm going to be quickly sharing my screen. Hit that slideshow button, give you another look at today's topic, which is going to be why you need a hybrid approach to API management. So we're going to be looking at a couple of things as we go along, but I thought instead of waiting for you to get to the bottom of the answer, wait for the 45 minutes to be over to get to why you need a hybrid approach to API management, I'll give it to you straight away. So my first slide is literally the last slide as well. So I'm going to be starting off with actually answering the question, why you need a hybrid API management approach. So now the only caveat I will put over here is that it might vary and you might care as different personas, as different audiences, as a product owner, product manager, business owner, you might care about a few different things, which might be separate from what you as a technical person, developer operations person might care about as well. We'll go into some of those nuances as we start the discussion as well, but just from a more top view perspective, the key reason why you would want a hybrid approach to API management is it lends greater flexibility. What does that usually mean? It essentially means that you can actually deploy your gateways anywhere in the world. It could be different cloud, it could be on premises, it could be in any geographical location of your choosing, but at the same time, it gives you the capability of actually managing everything through a single pane of glass, a single control plane that is managed as a SaaS product. It's a managed plane that enables you to control all of those different things. It also gives you, from a flexibility perspective, it helps you get started with things a lot more quickly. You could start off with a pure SaaS solution, or in our case, Tyk Cloud solution, and then expand that out across different regions so that, as your requirements and needs change, your solution is able to keep up with those changing needs and actually help you get to a faster time to value with the product as well. So that's the greater flexibility part of it. We'll dive a little bit deeper as we go into the conversation. It also, as a second point, brings better performance. And the reason, again, here is you're looking at gateways that are now residing much closer to your user. That means you're looking at lower latency, you're looking at greater response times. But at the same time, it also brings ease of management, like we talked about in greater flexibility. While you have all of these different distributed gateways across different areas closer to your users, managing and computing requests, it is still being managed through a single control plane, which essentially, makes life a lot easier to handle those instead of a siloed approach. And then finally, we've got increased resilience and uptime over here, which is essentially built into it. I'll go once again into the details of exactly what I mean by it, but here it's a bit of a shared responsibility where part of your infrastructure is part of a managed offering, which means that there is built-in SLAs, there is built-in uptime guarantees that come with it. Obviously, we have our own guarantees when we are providing this hybrid solution. And then equally with the gateway deployments, you have built-in resilience in the sense that they are autonomous in nature. They operate autonomously, and in case something fails, or with appropriate fallbacks and fail-safes in place. And we'll go again into the details of that. If something goes wrong with one gateway, it doesn't affect the others. If the control plane goes down for any reason whatsoever, your gateways don't stop working. It's still processing. It'll synchronize once things are back up and running as well. So overall, 3 big reasons why you would want to consider a hybrid approach to API management: greater flexibility, better performance, increased resilience, and uptime. So if this is all what you came for to get the answer to this question, then this is it. This is kind of it. You can always go back. But if you want to know more about how that looks like in practice with Tyk as our own hybrid offering, or Tyk Cloud offering, as we call it, and get some of those burning questions around security, compliance, use cases, case studies, what are people actually using this for? How does it look like in the wild? What are some of the pros? What are some of the cons? What are some of the competing, convenience versus control conversations that we're going to be having? So if you want to know more about that, stick around. We're going to be discussing all of those and more as we get into the next segment of our conversation. So with that, I am kicking off the next part of this, which will start off with a bit of a definition. I think it's important to talk about what hybrid API management actually means. I mean, obviously, we've started off with the why, which you can understand, but what that actually means in practice is that it is bringing the best of both worlds. It's something that you would probably see being used in the context of hybrid infrastructure in general, but hybrid API management as well, where there is typically a choice that needs to be made when you're thinking about how you manage your APIs and how you manage infrastructure. It's typically a choice between control, and on the other side of the spectrum is convenience. The control side of things is typically your on-premises or self-managed, where you are responsible for managing things yourself. And that means that you've got greater control over where things are hosted, how things are configured, and that's your control side of the spectrum. The convenience side of the spectrum is typically your SaaS offerings, your cloud offerings, your Tyk Cloud in our case, is the convenient end of the spectrum, where you can get up and running really quickly without have to bother yourself with the nitty-gritties of the infrastructure management and hosting and things like that. So up and running really quickly without having a whole lot of control when it comes to the configuration and where things are hosted. Control, self-hosted, self-managed, really easy for you to configure things, set up things based on your own requirements, but has a bit of a cost of ownership over a period of time. So, depending on where you stand over there, I think there are pros and cons to each one of them, which is where we come to our best of both worlds solution, which is the hybrid API management, where you've got self-hosted API gateways, which can be hosted anywhere in the world on any infrastructure of your choosing, and a single managed control plane. In our case, that's hosted by Tyk, but in general, it is a SaaS solution that is offered that enables you to manage those self-hosted API gateways that you have spread across your world, closer to your users, through a single, easy to manage control plane. And that's what hybrid API management is all about. Now, if you're going to go to sort of a little bit more technical definition almost, you can look at it as a flexible and scalable multi-cloud API management solution, where you've got control, or where you have the ability to control multiple API gateways anywhere, across regions, cloud providers, anything that you want to choose. Again, I talk about cloud providers here, but it can also be your own data centers, your own hosted locations, if you want to do that as well. If that is a requirement, then you can use this to host it, but you're managing them all through a single managed control plane. And let's look at a little bit of an example, a scenario. You have started your own business, your API product business that you've started off, and you wanted to get up and running really quickly. You set something up nice and simple. You've used an API gateway, which is absolutely fantastic because it brings in a whole lot of flexibility, abstraction, brings security into play, and you're looking a little bit future forward to manage your APIs a little bit better. Now, right now, you're in a single region, single data center, and your users are pretty much right now fairly local. You've started things locally, and you want to test out what is going on. You've got a great idea. You want to get up and running fast. So you host it, you start it, it starts going really well. You are 1 year down the line now, and you've got great users. Users are now coming and flocking to you from all parts of the world. Perhaps something like this, where you've started off maybe in the Americas, and it's essentially extended out to different regions around the world. Your users are really liking what they're seeing, and the word has spread across different continents, and business is going well. But you're starting to see a little bit of a problem. There's a couple of challenges that are popping up. One of those is performance, because as people around the world are making requests and calls to your APIs, they are seeing a little bit of a drop because there is a little bit of an increased latency that is bringing in. It's still easy to manage because it's still a single control plane to manage all of those requests, but the performance hit comes in. Potentially resilience as well, where overall, it's still a single system. It's not exactly a distributed architecture right now. So in case things fail at that point of time, your overall users might not have the access to your products and services at all points of time. So reduce performance, reduce resilience, given that there are more people now making calls and requests to your APIs. So what do? One of those solutions is to potentially expand out your distributed architecture. You might think about hosting separate solutions across different parts of the world, closer to your users, and essentially, within reason, of course, probably not in every single country in the world, but potentially within specific regions, to bring that performance time up. What that means is, this is now that you're closer to the users, you've got reduced latency, faster response times. Therefore, again, users are happy. However, it comes at a cost of management. Ease of management goes down because now you're looking at siloed solutions that do not talk to each other. They're not managed through a single control plane. That means you potentially need to manage 4 to 5, perhaps, different solutions, at least based on this diagram and architecture, which means that's greater usage of resources. It is greater usage of time. You might need different teams that are coming in to actually look at managing these and supporting these and maintaining these. And that brings in a lot more challenges. Now, don't get me wrong. In some cases, you might have to do this simply because you might have compliance requirements and data sovereignty laws that you need to pertain to. You might need to have a solution that is standalone and does not communicate anywhere across the world to any other systems at all. So you may not get past that if you're in a highly regulated industry with higher compliance requirements. But if you're not, then this could still have some of the challenges. It will do the job to a certain degree from a performance perspective, but it comes at a cost. So what could be a better solution? The better solution here is the hybrid approach we spoke about here, where you can still have your locally hosted gateways anywhere around the world, different regions, closer to your users. That means we are taking care of performance, we are taking care of lower latency, we are taking care of faster response times. And at the same time, we are still keeping up with the ease of management because the control plane is still hosted in a single location and providing a single dashboard, single management layer to all of your API gateways hosted across the world. Now, if you look below, there is also a resilience built into it. And the reason for this is also because in case one of the gateways goes down, that doesn't automatically mean that the other gateways around the world have gone down as well. That means your overall uptime is a lot better. That means users are not going to lose access to your service. They are not going to lose access to your products. Therefore, happy users typically leads to better business and better income and better revenue, better word of mouth. Business will prosper. So that is essentially a bit of a scenario as to why you might want to use something like this. And I think Tyk's offering right now is very similar to this. And I think we'll talk a little bit more as we go into the next slides about what the architecture of these looks like. What are the different components? What are the different systems that enable this to happen? There's one other thing that I want to touch upon here from a resilience perspective, and I touched upon it in the why slide deck previously, is that if any of these components potentially fail, that doesn't automatically affect the other components. And again, very, very important from a resilience perspective, even if, especially in Tyk's context, even if the control plane were to go down, that does not stop the operation of the individual gateways. They will still be operating, they'll still be processing the request, they'll still be servicing your end users. And once the control plane is up and running, they will resynchronize. And therefore, if there is any new policy, any new thing that needs to be synchronized with, that needs to be pushed down to the gateways from a configuration perspective, that will happen at that point of time. But in the meantime, if things go wrong, there is resilience built into it. So you can sleep easy, you can run your business without the fear of things going wrong in a very flexible, scalable manner, which is essentially what we need, especially when we talk about an economy like today. We need solutions that are flexible, we need solutions that are reliable, and we need solutions that don't require massive expanded teams to look after it. We need efficiency built into what we are doing today. So that was a bit of a primer. I'm going to head back into my slide just to give you a little bit more context of what we spoke about, hopefully a little bit clearer than what we spoke about previously. Once again, back to greater flexibility, deploy gateways anywhere, anytime, which is then managed through a single control plane. Better performance, deploy gateways closer to your users for faster response times and reduced latency. Increased resilience and uptime. Like there are two components to this. There is the autonomous operations of the gateways and the control plane with robust fallbacks, as we spoke about. But equally, because it's a shared model here, Tyk has, and in our case, at least, we've got our own guaranteed uptimes and SLAs. And of course, that doesn't absolve you of your responsibilities. You still need to make sure that your own gateways and your own hosted infrastructure are taken care of. They are built securely. They are built in a way that has fallbacks, etc., built into it. But we are doing our part when with our own offering. So there is built-in resilience and uptimes. There is one other thing, which is a bit of a bonus, which we did not talk about previously, which is compliance. I think we touched upon it when we were looking at the diagrams, but it is also an enabler for compliance, which is now made a little bit easier. Probably not to the extent of a self-hosted, self-managed on-premise solution where your things are very, very air-gapped. But once again, we are talking best of both worlds, where you still have the ability to decide where those local gateways are hosted, how the data is being processed within that, which is to say that you're managing your data locally and therefore complying to local requirements in those specific regions without having to call back to the control plane necessarily. Which again speaks to data sovereignty requirements and compliance requirements in your specific vertical. So there's a bit of a bonus there where, you know, compliance is now made a little bit easier, especially when you compare to other SaaS products out there or, you know, SaaS solutions out there. So with that, a quick word from perhaps, I'm going to hand this over to Sonja to talk a little bit more about what Tyk has to offer. We've got, obviously, now the context has been set. We've got something that we have to offer to hopefully solve, put your mind at ease and give you a solution instead of just the problem and the good stuff, but actually a tool that is going to enable you to answer the question, how do I do this? So here we go. Sonja, over to you.
Perfect. Yes. So what is Tyk Cloud? So Tyk Cloud is a fully SaaS managed service to manage your API and the infrastructure that is needed for that. Thank you. It's back. So no worry. We in Tyk Cloud we have the Tyk Cloud console, which is for the operation for the platform team to set up the infrastructure. So we were talking about control plane managing your APIs, but you could have multiple control planes. You could decide to have, if you're a large organization, you might have different business units and you want to really segregate the different environments. So you could have a control plane for one business unit, a control plane for a different business unit. They want to have strict segregation of the data. And Tyk Cloud is the interface that enables you to provision those environments, to set up the permissions, which teams are able to control the configuration of which gateway. So really at the infrastructure level, also infrastructure management. Tyk Cloud does the whole high availability, disaster recovery for you. So you don't have to think, how do I back up my database? How do I need to monitor it? Is it running well? Are the data there? Do I need to? Now all of this is taken care of for you. So you can really focus on the core business, which is providing value through your APIs. And then each business unit can have their own control plane. And this is the place where you do proper API management. So this is creating API, designing API, securing APIs, publishing APIs, monitoring, testing. So all the full API lifecycle management operation are done in the control plane. And that's super helpful for every team. So they can have the configuration, they can do all the setup for the API in their control plane. We have a dashboard interface for the API management. We have a portal to export to your APIs, to publish your APIs, to expose documentation. And this control plane will also send the configuration to the gateways. So the gateways, they will get all the configuration from the control plane. And then with Tyk Cloud, you have the flexibility to choose where you want to host your gateways. So it could be in Tyk Cloud, we can manage them for you. You don't even have to think about it. Or as a hybrid solution, you can also deploy the Tyk gateways directly in your infrastructure together with your services, with your Kubernetes workloads, with your other containers, and having managed as part as your own infrastructure. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the architecture. So which component do we have in there? So in the control plane, we have the developer portal where you can expose API, have third-party developers come and register and use your API and get access to your APIs. and the dashboard, which is the API management configuration piece that Tyk offer. And as I was saying, sending the configuration to your gateway. So now people might want to ask, what is the difference between Tyk Cloud offering and self-managed? Because when we are talking about hybrid, we are kind of a mixed way. So you have the control plane and the cloud console in Tyk Cloud, and the gateway is hosted in your infrastructure. And there is, of course, still the option of self-managed, where you can host yourself the control planes and deploy the gateways in your infrastructure. But in this case, you have a lot more work to do. You have to think about disaster recovery, about management of the database in the control plane. You have to think about the availability, about the security. So there's lots more of infrastructure topic, compliance topic that you have to think about. And Tyk Cloud, having all this in the cloud, allows you to really focus on the value that you need. And so we can go.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, go on.
Okay,
I was just going to say, I think this is kind of the spectrum that I think we spoke about previously, where we've got the hybrid, we've got the self-managed, and we've got the Tyk Cloud. Now, essentially, cloud and hybrid pretty much fall in the same bracket. I think when we talk about Tyk Cloud, we're talking about two different use cases, and that is what is being portrayed over here. We've got the hybrid and we've got the cloud. And then we've got the self-managed, where, again, this from a spectrum perspective, on the left of the screen is essentially where you talk about the maximum amount of control on your configuration, on your infrastructure. And there are the different components that we look at right now. And I think there's probably a need for a quick update to this as well, because now we are not just supporting MongoDB, we've also got Postgres in here as well. But this is essentially what the different components look like for different categories of users interacting with Tyk as a product. And then the hybrid, like you see on top, you've got your Tyk Cloud, the control plane, as we talk about. Essentially, with the control plane, what you're getting is you've got that dashboard to interact with the graphic user interface. You've got the developer portal that essentially enables cataloging or creating API products and exposing that for consumption, for usage, for third-party developers and partners. Brings in a whole lot of analytics to this as well as unified analytics that brings in as well. And then you've got infrastructure that is hosted on your own side, where you've got the gateway together with Redis. These are two components that are bringing together and making sure that your API consumers are kept happy, and you've got your request and response times lowered because they are in a closer proximity there. And then on the cloud side of things, obviously we've got everything managed by Tyk. So you don't really need to bother too much with it. All you need to do is interact with Tyk, sign up, and manage your APIs through your services. So that's sort of a gist of, I think, an introduction to the world of what we are looking at, from what hybrid management, why hybrid management, hybrid approach to API management is important, what we've got to offer. What I want to do next is I think I want to go into some of the more questions. So what we did as an exercise for this is we gathered some of the questions from our own commercial teams, things that are being asked of us every single time when we are out there speaking to people, speaking to users, prospects, all of that, which is why we've got some of the commercial team, as well as some of the research that we have conducted over, improvements for the product and some of the thinking behind capabilities that have been brought together. And that's where we've got Sonja coming in as well. And we asked some of the folks from our community when they were signing up for this particular event. So we've gathered some FAQs, some questions specific to this event, and we are hoping to address those common questions. And if you've got any questions as you follow along, please feel free to put that in the chat. So with that, I am going to pose my very first question. I think this is a question for Jia, perhaps to get you into the mix as well. From a commercial standpoint, it will be really good for us to understand what is a typical scenario, problem statement that you get asked when, to the answer to which is a hybrid API management or Tyk hybrid in this case. So what is sort of the problem statement? What is the challenge, key challenge and issue that our users, customers, prospects are coming to us with?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Primarily on the commercial side here, we get questions regarding hybrid, and the use case that's typically posed to us is that customers want to have gateways deployed close to their services. They want gateways either on-premise, they want gateways maybe in a cloud provider, be it GCP, be it Azure, be it AWS. It doesn't matter to us where Tyk is installed. But what they don't want is the responsibility of managing the control plane. They want somebody to provide them assistance with managing the data plane, managing the database backups, ensuring high availability of the control plane. So for customers who typically want just the ability to deploy gateways close to their services, they can actually delegate the management of the control plane to Tyk. And in this use case, it's, again, to your point, the best of both worlds. You don't have to worry about data resiliency. You don't have to worry about high availability of your databases. All you have to worry about is deploying the services and the gateways close to the services.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very typical situation. I'm assuming that's coming up every time. If I were to flip that around a little bit, and I think I was initially thinking whether we do that at the end, but I'm also curious where obviously we've got a very consultative approach to some of the questions that come to us. Are there situations where we would not recommend a hybrid approach to API management?
Yeah, so on the flip side, it's also very interesting because some companies are incredibly high compliance and they have very stringent requirements for where their data might be maintained, where the data might be shipped. So our self-managed licensing doesn't phone home. Again, it sits behind our customer's firewall. It's completely air-gapped and black-boxed. We don't control anything that goes on in that environment. So typically for organizations that are that have very high or stringent compliance requirements, then we would recommend that they go with the self-managed approach. However, otherwise, another use case would be that our organizations have very resourceful DevOps teams, and they have very well-resourced infrastructure teams as well. So those organizations are completely comfortable with managing uptime of the data plane. They have no problem with ensuring high availability of their databases, and they also don't mind deploying the gateways as well. So there's two sides to the coin. Some organizations prefer not to use hybrid because of very stringent compliance requirements. And some organizations already have the capability or the power to manage their own infrastructure. So in those instances, it doesn't really matter if they choose to go self-managed over hybrid.
So those are really good points there. I think I'm also curious about the scale of an organization as well, because I think one of the things that I think keeps coming up, and I'm a big proponent of this, is stop over planning for things and or stop over complicating things. I think that's probably a better way to put it in this particular context. So because I would imagine the scale of an organization comes into play here as well, because like you said, in some cases, if they're already managing their own infrastructure, they have teams that are built to do that, then it makes a whole lot of sense. But equally on the other side of that, if your organization does not have the capability to do that as well, you're just about getting started, it's very early days, you're still testing out your product, you're still testing out your product market fit, then maybe you don't need a hybrid approach right away, unless, like you said, there is very strict compliance requirements, in which case, again, you might go down a self-managed route. But if that's not really the case, then perhaps a hybrid approach may not be a step one, perhaps. It may be a little bit that you grow into, but probably not as a step one, given, I think, scale being a bit of a factor there.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, for some of the organizations that are just starting out, again, I hate to recommend an option that is overkill for their use case. So companies that are just starting out, the self-managed on-premise installations are very, very powerful. And same with our SaaS offerings as well. So Tyk Cloud offerings as well for organizations that just want to get started. They just want a gateway. They just want to put traffic through it and not have to worry about anything else. Hybrid may not be the best approach for them starting out. And that's exactly to your point.
And I think, Sonja, you had mentioned something about flexibility as well. I think we were discussing this previously, where you're not really tied into one solution or the other, are you? You can very easily, as your requirements change over a period of time, you can expand into a hybrid model as opposed to, just going on day one. You can start off with something else and then, change to a hybrid model.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe you want to start in clouds because you're testing something, you want to iterate quickly, and then you realize, okay, now it makes sense to bring back closer to the services. Or maybe another approach is you start close to your services and you're doing some lift and shift into the cloud, and it's you using that mechanism to have your cloud migration go faster and really in an easy way without having to change anything about the control plane, just changing the location of your gateway. And you could have also something like for production hybrid and in development, on cloud or in different sites. So it's really about flexibility. What do you need in which moment, and knowing that no matter where you deploy your gateway, the control plan, the configuration, the compliance, the management is all done for you.
Yeah, and again, it once again goes back to even other layers to flexibility, because like I think Jia was mentioning, where it could really be your own choice. And again, your choice of where you're hosting those API gateways. Today, that might be an AWS, or it might be an Azure, but tomorrow you might want to consider GCP, or maybe you want to consider completely self-managed data centers, self-hosted data centers. And your needs will change. In most cases, it changes. And there could be a few different factors for that. It might be a cost factor. It might be, that a new cloud offering has come along, which really suits your needs, is built for your particular case. And for a long time, that used to be the case when I think, back in the days of me being part of a digital agency, I think we used to evaluate cloud solutions for deployments. And a lot of times when we thought about a typical .NET style stack, I think Azure typically had a slight edge over some of the other offerings from a cost perspective. But again, the thing that I'm trying to highlight here is, based on your requirements, you want the tools and deployment options to work for you. You don't want to be tied into solutions. You don't want to be tied into ecosystems as well at the same time. You want something that is a little bit more agnostic. You want something that is a little bit more flexible, that, once again, you have the peace of mind that if things change, if needs and requirements are updated, or you need to upgrade to something, you have the opportunity to do so in a very flexible, over expensive way to do that. I think that's as bluntly as I can put it, because ultimately it comes down to cost, doesn't it?
That's really true. And you know what? Customer get both all the time, and then suddenly you have another department that is working with another cloud provider, and then you have to have that flexibility to be able to adjust whatever you're working with. Yeah,
absolutely. Great. I think that hopefully gives you a bit of an idea about, okay, when to use a hybrid approach, or Tyk Cloud's hybrid offering, versus when you should not be using it. I think it's equally important to know both sides of the spectrum, what is and what isn't for you at what points of time. Now, moving along, of course, a key thing about any kind of solution, or adopting any kind of solution, is trust in that solution. I think we spoke a little bit about resilience, but we also want to touch upon, I think we get a lot of questions around security and data protection. So we'll start off with security first, perhaps. I think, once again, it is important to highlight that this is a shared model and shared model of responsibility. So there are two different parts of this, which I think we need to talk about. But perhaps, Jia, you can speak to the security aspect of Tyk Cloud, and in this case, specifically Tyk, our hybrid offering, and what do we have in place for that?
Yeah. So compliance and security are two of the biggest concerns when individuals come to us and ask, hey, if we're going to go with the hybrid approach and consume Tyk that way, what do we have to be worried about? What do we have to be concerned about? Now, primarily, if you think about hybrid models, we would be managing the control planes, and the customer ultimately manages their gateways. So as with any other cloud provider or any other cloud system, it's a shared responsibility model. The cloud provider will provide some sort of assurances regarding security, and then it's up to you, the consumer, as well, to provide the other half, or the other component of that security. So how does Tyk fit in with compliance? How does Tyk provide security? So our Tyk Cloud, again, has a few certifications. We are ISO 27001 certified, we are ISO 9001 certified, and we are also SOC 2 certified. So that means that based on the outlines of those certifications, we do protect customers' data very stringently. Now, on the flip side, since you're installing hybrid gateways in your infrastructure as the customer, that is completely up to the customer to secure and lock down and ensure that it's available and secure, as with any other software best practices.
And I would probably say equally, I think when it comes to our own software, anything that we are providing you to use, it is within our infrastructure, we've got our own security testing that goes along. I think that's where obviously the compliance certification speak to that as well, but equally, I think we do that on a regular basis so that we keep that trust going. We don't want things to fail. We don't want you to suffer at any point of time as our users. You don't want to regret ever to have any kind of regrets using us. We want you to be happy. We want you to have confidence in us, and we want you to have confidence in your own product, so that you can go out to your own users and say, hey, we've got a product that is going to suit all of your needs. You don't have to worry about this, and we are assured by Tyk. But ultimately, it is a shared responsibility, but we do our absolute best to make sure that we've got things sorted out on our own. The other thing that we also have is our own gateways. The Tyk gateway itself is actually an open source gateway. So if you ever wanted to have a look under the hood of what's really going on, what kind of code we've written to power the gateway that you're going to be using to power your API product or to power your business, that is all readily available. I think we've got a few open source, well, pretty much most of the underlying components are open source at this point of time. There are, the dashboard, the management layer is a little bit more proprietary. I think that's sort of the added value, but everything underneath that, everything that is powering the API management platform that is Tyk is completely open source. So I think if you want to have a look, once again, it speaks to trust in our own ability to build products that are that we believe in ourselves, and hopefully that extends to our users as well, so that if you ever had anything to look under, you've got it all available to you. Yeah. Okay, cool. That is a great answer to the security and compliance perspective. Moving along, I think there are a couple of points that have come across from users around pros and cons. I think we spoke a little bit about when to use and when not to use potentially, but if you were to think about it from a few different personas, perhaps, I think, because it pertains, like I said right at the beginning, people might be evaluating a product or an approach from their own needs and requirements. And as a commercial, as part of a commercial team, or someone who is on the business side of things, you may be looking for different things, and your pros and cons for this might be a little bit different compared to, say, a technical person. So maybe Jia, from the commercial side of things, perhaps if you could enlighten us a little bit about what are some of those pros and cons when people are evaluating Tyk. What are they really looking for?
Yeah, so speaking purely from a hybrid approach, as a product owner or as an individual who wants to use an API first approach to my business, the power or value add of hybrid is that I don't need to hire an additional operations member in order to manage the infrastructure. I don't need to pay the salary of a DevOps engineer to ensure the resiliency of my databases, to ensure the uptime and high availability of those services. I only need an individual who's capable of deploying an application, whether that be on bare metal, containerized, on Kubernetes. It doesn't matter to us. We can be installed anywhere as we're cloud native. But as an individual who's trying to power an API-driven approach, I don't need to budget for that. I just need to be able to have my gateways deployed and have them available to my customers. So from a business perspective, it really is lowering the total cost of ownership for my API approach, in the sense that I can delegate some of the more sensitive and resource-consuming operations to Tyk, who do it really well. Our DevOps engineers are very, very good. So that's one of the primary pros of the hybrid approach.
I think what I'm hearing here is essentially, I think if you were to bring it down to our bullet points once again, I think it is about reducing your total cost of ownership. And I think there is a relative aspect to this. I would probably consider our Tyk Cloud, the full SaaS offering, probably doing a slightly better job with the reduction of total cost of ownership, because there is a bit of ownership here. But compared to a fully self-managed solution, you're still getting up and running really, really quickly. So there is that reduced total cost of ownership that comes with it. And at the same time, you're marrying that with a greater degree of flexibility of solution, flexibility of deployment, and flexibility of your team's resources as well. Now you're still managing infrastructure, but you're managing a lot less than what you would have done previously. So, that little gain over there, and I call it little pretty much in air quotes, because it is fairly significant for most enterprise teams, can bring a lot of value to organizations, especially in uncertain economies. And at the same time, it enables you to get, to a faster time to value. It essentially gets you up and running quickly. It gets you experimenting quickly. It avoids a little bit of that over planning pithole that you don't want to get into. you want to make sure that things are being tested, you're getting feedback, and you're getting up and running as soon as possible. So 3 reasons there. That's really good. I'm just pretty literally paraphrasing what Jia mentioned, but that's essentially what we are looking for as well. The other side of this is the technical aspect of things, where we speak to developers and operations folks as well, and they have a few different reasons why they might want to look at a hybrid approach to API management, or Tyk hybrid in this case. Jia, what do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so as a developer for hybrid, speaking purely, I'm going to nerd out for a second here. The technical capabilities are that I can install hybrid in anything really. So since the control plane again lives within AWS, Tyk again is deployed on AWS in 5 different regions. So I can install a hybrid gateway on my local computer. I can install a hybrid gateway on GCP. I can install a hybrid gateway on Azure, and they'll all talk to the control plane and synchronize and pull in the definitions. And ultimately, I can drive traffic through any one of these gateways that are deployed. I can install hybrid on a Raspberry Pi that's running locally in my home. So the deployment flexibility from a tech perspective is just truly so unique and so powerful, because as opposed to, let's say, like a self-managed installation where there's other components that the gateway might need to rely on, hybrid, truly, you only need to deploy the gateway and then an ephemeral Redis associated with that. So deployment flexibility is one of also the biggest pros of hybrid from my tech experience anyways.
Awesome. And I would imagine, I think, to extend that to what we spoke about previously, I think performance is another thing that a lot of developers and operations folks would really care about, want to make sure that your response times are as optimized as possible, as low as possible. Your latencies are reduced to the best of your ability as much as possible once again. And this again makes it all very possible through in a very flexible way. I'm also curious from an integration perspective, because obviously we're talking about a specific deployment model here, but at the same time, we are not taking away from any of the goodness of the API management platform that we've got here, where you still get great integration capabilities. You've got great security capabilities coming in. You've got the ability to expose your APIs and integrate with external solution. I think we've got support for open API standards, which is one of my favorite things of this particular product that I talk about, where you've got support for open API specification. You've got support coming out for open telemetry as well, which is where I'm coming to Sonja as well. Your thoughts on possibly not just talking about it from a deployment perspective, but just being a complete solution for organizations looking for that multi-cloud flexible solution to their API management problem. Sonja, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's amazing, because as a company, you want to start really quick, have everything you need, be able to also, as we were dealing with the deployment flexibility, be able to try it out in the whole deployment lifecycle, from development to staging to production. You can have it as a developer running all on your machine, testing end to end, the gateway, the APIs, the integration. But while not having to care about all the management, the configuration, the synchronization, and knowing that what you're working with will be stable, will be running everywhere, it's like amazing to start with. And as you were saying, with just self-manage, you have to always think, okay, how big is my database? You have to do the whole provisioning for the infrastructure, for the control plan, which can be a little bit overwhelming at first, because you don't know, I'm starting, is it going to be big or is small, getting how will be the growth, what do I need to move quickly, to extend, and we do it all for you.
Perfect. One other thing that you might care about is essentially resilience. I think we once again spoke about it earlier on, but I want to re-emphasize that a little bit more here, because looking back at the architecture that we've got a control plane, we've got a data plane. Data plane can comprise of multiple API gateways across regions. And the resilience aspect of it is, if one gateway goes down, it does not bring down an entire system. That is part one. Part two of that is, even if your control plane were to go down at any point of time, your gateways don't stop working. They will still be communicating with your users. They will still be processing your requests. And what the control plane essentially does, it essentially is a way for you to enable policies that synchronize across all of these different gateways, essentially an enforcer of your requirements, your governance, your policies, and things like that, essentially. And so even if that were to go away for a period of time, there is a local copy available of that at the local gateways. Therefore, they would always be falling back to that. There will always be sort of not an older version, but the most recent version of that available to them. And therefore, they will be operating under those circumstances. And then when the requirements changes and the control plane is away, when it comes back online, it will resynchronize and the gateway will have the latest copy of those policies available and it will work smoothly. So what happens is all of this is happening behind the scenes, and we built it in such a way that your end users ultimately do not get to know any of this stuff. If a locally available gateway goes down, the only thing that you might see is slightly slower responses, perhaps in some cases, but that is the extent of it. Your service is still available, it's ready, it is accessible, and therefore your overall reputation does not go down in the dump, as we've seen with some of our big cloud providers and their outages, unfortunately. We've got one final question that has come up. Some of the people who have gone ahead and explored our documentation, they've come across something called the MDCB. That is something that we've got as part of our offering. And I think we speak some of the similar terminologies and common things that we expressed and spoke about today. So maybe let's talk a little bit about what is the difference between that. What is MDCB? How does that pertain to our hybrid and distributed offering that we've got going right now? So maybe over to you, Jia, on this one.
Yeah, so MDCB is really an acronym for Multi-Data Center Bridge, and it is truly what powers our technology in the cloud, and it's truly what powers the hybrid enablement. So when you think about it, if you're deploying gateways in a bunch of different regions, these gateways need to pull their configurations from somewhere. How can they pull these configurations? What components do they talk to? Of course, you can't let each gateway query the database, directly, and you want to maintain a stable copy of changes across all these gateways. So the MDCB component can be thought of as a synchronizer component. It allows you to manage gateways in as many regions as you choose through a single pane of glass, which is Tyk Cloud. It's coincidentally also the piece that powers the gateways that are deployed on our cloud as well. So it's a proprietary piece of technology that we've developed here at Tyk, and it allows you to use the hybrid functionality, deploy gateways in any region, on any system, on any hardware, and ultimately it lets these gateways know configuration changes and also pushes the updates to the various gateways.
Awesome. All right. We don't really talk a lot about MDCB per se, because it's essentially primarily an underlying technology in this case. But if you think about a distributed model of deployment, whether that's a hybrid offering, or you want to manage all of that across your own data centers where your control plane is also hosted on your own infrastructure, then MDCB is what is going to be powering that ability for you as well. Sonja, I thought you might want to add something there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's maybe one interesting point is, since we are developing all those components and running them ourselves in Tyk Cloud, as we are running in Tyk Cloud, we're also learning and seeing best practices, develop deployment patterns. So we use Tyk Cloud, our offering, to also learn how to make the product better for people that do self-manage. So any improvement that we make to make it easier to monitor the control plane or to improvement with MDCB is also goodness that people that use the self-managed offering also get from our experience running the full stack in our cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing is also, if you want to go more into the details of some of the stuff, we've recently updated our docs, and I think it's probably one of my favorite pages to read. I think if you want to go into the details of it, of how we are doing what we are doing right now, further to some of the conversations we had, some of the reasons why you want to consider a hybrid approach or MDCB in some cases, we've got all that noted down. So if you really like this webinar and you say, oh, this is great, you've got to sell this to your bosses for the decision makers, then that page might enable you to do that together with the things that you've learned here today. So we've made it as easy as possible for you to understand what we've got to offer, the reasons why you might want to consider this as a solution, and hopefully an easy way for you to actually adopt it as part of your existing stack. So if you want to check out our docs, feel free to do that. Links will be below when this is up on YouTube. If you want to try it out for yourself, then feel free to reach out to us. I think we are a happy bunch of people to help you out at any point of time. We'll get you up and running really, really quickly. with a license key, and tell us what you think about it. If you liked it, if you did not like certain things, then let us know. We are always open to feedback. We are always improving our product. It has already come a long way, and I think we've got some great feedback, but equally we've got some feedback that has been very helpful in improving the product. So if you try it, tell us about it, good or bad. We're completely open to feedback as well. Alrighty, I think that brings us to the end of our discussion today. It's been pretty good. It's been quite an exciting conversation. I think it is a space that is growing more and more. I'm seeing more conversations and discussions about how a hybrid model can be adopted in organizations. It is not always the easiest thing because again, there is the team separations and scale separations, and even in this particular space, it can be sometimes a bit of a challenge. But having said that, we are seeing greater adoption and people buying into the pros rather than the cons of it. So with that, any final words, you guys?
All good. Just to confirm feedback, let us know. Talk to us, community forum, LinkedIn, Twitter, anything. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. It doesn't need to be too overly formal. Just reach out to us anywhere you find us. Even if there's a YouTube comment on this, I think it's perfectly okay. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. This has been a great session. I will see you next time. Tomorrow, actually, I'm going to be hosting another one where I'm going to be going through the building of a production-ready GraphQL API using Apollo and Tyk. So if you're interested, it is going to be a 90-minute workshop, hands-on workshop. If you're interested to do that, please feel free to join me. I will share the links after the session as well. So with that, take care. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you so much, Jia. It has been really, really informative. Hopefully everyone found it useful too. So until next time, take care.
It's been a pleasure. See you, everyone.
See you guys. Bye-bye.